Welcome back to the TowerCast podcast, the towering podcast for the towering filmmaker of El Paso and the world. We are at the Las Cruces International Film Festival, and man, it's been amazing. It's been amazing, and then our special guest, you may have seen him in last year's episode. If you haven't, go see that because we talk about his career and going to Sundance and doing all these amazing things in film, and he's still going at it. That's right. I got to introduce Mr. John Ericasso.
Hello, I'm the actor's perspective and asking the acting questions.
Mr. Michael Alao.
I'm glad to be back for round 2 at Las Cruces Film Festival.
True. And I'm your humble film servant, Carlos de la Torre. Thank you to Austin Young, making sure we're sounding good back there. And we have the very awesome, the very inspiring, the very tired Ross Mars.
No.
Well deserved.
I'm ready to go.
Much,
I'm ready
Ross.
to go. I'm getting my second win right now.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
Right.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for inviting us out again. It's always a blast, and we get to talk to a lot of great people, not just the big wigs that you have and the big names, but also independent filmmakers who are trying to do this just like us and love cinema and love to contribute to it. So,
well, that's the goal for me, right? Is to celebrate independent film. And I was talking yesterday to Giancarlo Esposito. We were talking, and I said, when did this film screen the show? And I said, when did this film come out? He says, well, it came out. It didn't really have a festival run, and it kind of got lost in distribution. And then I was talking to Giancarlo's manager, a friend of mine, a guy named Josh Kesselman, who had just finished a film with Billy Bob Thornton and Robin Wright. And I said, what happened to the film? He said, it got buried. It never got released. We didn't get into the festivals. And he said, the festivals have changed so much because both Giancarlo and Josh and myself, we've been around a long time. I've been doing this, 30 years. And festivals, the independent scene has changed for film festivals. When I started in the 90s, Sundance was this great place for independent filmmakers where, I had 2 films premiere there, and I've been to Sundance 3 or 4 times now. But in the 90s, you would go there, you wouldn't have a distributor, you didn't have to have a big name actor, and they would, celebrate
the boom
independent
of
film. And the same thing with Tribeca and Telluride and South by and Toronto. And now you can't get into those festivals unless you have a big name star and a distributor attached.
Already.
So I saw the landscape shifting for independent filmmakers where they didn't have a home anymore.
No.
And as a filmmaker myself, I was pretty pissed. I'm like, what? Yeah. These festivals are turning their back on who got them there, the indie filmmaker. Right. And so I said, screw this. I'm going to start my own festival. But I don't think it's being done right. I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah,
and so we started this for the independent filmmaker to come here, screen their film in front of audiences that appreciate it, and in a great facility, and that's why we're doing it. So
we appreciate that because to be quite frank with you, Russ, last year we had a few films of ours here at the Las Cruces International Film Festival, and that was great because, to be honest with you, leading up to that, every year we go through the cycle of the film festival politics are just not something we're interested in.
It is political.
We're just not interested in. So something like Las Cruces is refreshing to be like, all right, man, we can have our indie films and connect with people that are on the same boat, and then have people who are real industry, decision makers watch them ultimately, right? So it's very refreshing, and we're appreciative as indie filmmakers.
And we try to do the trick is because we aren't Park City, because we aren't New York City, because we aren't, so we're in a market that wouldn't attract an audience organically to a film festival.
Right. But we're in New Mexico, which is
a hotbed, right? It is a hotbed for people making films, but we're really trying to go to people who are watching films.
Right.
So how do you get an audience to watch an independent film? Because audiences, they want to go see a Marvel movie, they want to see Chris Pine, they want to see Ryan Guy, so how do you get an audience? So what I've stumbled onto a formula that's been really successful that I don't know if it's being done at other places is we bring in special guests like a Giancarlo Esposito, last year William H. Macy, we've had Brendan Fraser, and the audiences come out like, wow, cool, I want to see these people and interact with them. And they, hey, there's a film playing. As long as I'm here, I'm going to go in there.
They come for the name, they stay for the film.
Right. So it's really worked out well. And last year we had 10,000 people. This year we're looking like close to 13,000 people. Wow. So it's really become a real festival, and the attendance has been great. And the quality of the films has gone way up. So it's been really rewarding. It's taken a lot of work to get here.
Absolutely.
But it's
and we have to give a shout out to your team and the students that you bring in to put this
we're
festival.
Student run. We're the largest film festival in the country, run by a university, New Mexico State University.
And they're on top of it. I've been seeing everybody. I mean, they're on their walkies, they're doing the call outs, they're making sure everybody gets into their theaters. And I think, it all adds to the experience. Then when people come in here, it has that elevation.
Even we were a part of the muscle for Giancarlo yesterday, just part of defending him against the crowds.
Yeah. No,
really
and that was the other thing why I did this is when I was a young filmmaker, I went to the Sundance Film Festival. And it changed my life because there were people, there were filmmakers there, storytellers there who were just making movies, right? They didn't care what the budget was. They didn't care who the stars were. They didn't care who the distributor was. They were just making movies. And Sundance changed my life. And so as I started teaching film at New Mexico State, I thought, how do I really teach filmmaking? Because the most formative moment for me was going to Sundance. I don't know that I can do a field trip and bring, 100 students. It'll cost a fortune to fly. I said, I'm going to have to try and do that here and do. So that was really the goal. Is I wanted to create a film festival for my students so that they could experience the world of independent filmmaking firsthand, real world experience.
And the both sides of the coin, right? Because you're also working on feature films that are independent here in New Mexico. So that's the production side of the coin, and now the exhibition.
Yeah. Well, I have two goals in life. One is I want to be a good father and a husband, and the second one is I want to grow film in southern New Mexico. So how do I grow film in southern New Mexico? I can make movies here, which I do, and that'll help it. I can teach filmmakers how to make films here, which I do, and then the film festival is probably the biggest contribution I do because it's the mouthpiece for film in southern New Mexico. All over the state, when people think about film in southern New Mexico, they think about the Las Cruces International Film Festival.
I love that you're touching on that because, as most people know, we're from El Paso, right? So, but we're
I consider El Paso part of southern New Mexico because 60% of our film students at New Mexico State at the Creative Media Institute, 60% are from El Paso.
And that's what I want to touch on is that it's been a very, at least on the film festival side, I mean, we work with all the guys. We're with Plaza Classic, we're with El Paso Film Festival, with Media Fest, and naturally here, the partnership with Las Cruces International. Everybody's very helpful of each other. Everybody promotes each other's festivals. Everybody's like, hey, what can we do for you? How can we help?
Support independent film, at least in this region.
It is very collective.
Doug Pullen's a good friend with Plaza Classic, and Carlos obviously now teaching with us at CMI Carlos Corral, the El Paso Film Festival. So, a rising tide lifts all boats. So the more successful each one of us are, the more successful the next one will be.
Right.
So I really, I really enjoy, and Chris Hanna with his film festival. So I think it's great. Like I said, I consider El Paso part of southern New Mexico, and again, maybe it's Texas, much bigger state than New Mexico.
But naturally, I mean,
my students are majority are from El Paso. So and I want to see them work. Alfonso Loy, Alfonso, and he's our technical director. We couldn't make this festival without Alfonso. So I was just with Cabe Tejada, who's from Juarez, right? So I consider Juarez part of that. So we're one big region.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
We're a family because filmmakers, we got to watch out for each other and help each other.
No, we really do. We really do. And we've seen that on the first kind of perspective, how we help each other out. And that's the goal, right? That's the point. So that's all inspiring. Now, what can you say about this year's film festival? What's been the consensus? What's been the feedback from the guests, from the special guests, from the filmmakers, from the attendees? What have you heard?
Well, it's really rewarding. Yesterday, when talking to Giancarlo and his manager Josh, they said, this is just amazing. We've never been to a festival that really is this warm, where it's not just the people, the filmmakers. It's not just the people working. It's the whole community are just so grateful and celebrating cinema at its rawest, purest form. And I've had a number of filmmakers just come up to me and say, this you need, and the opening filmmakers said the same thing. They're like, this is the best film festival we've ever been to. And it's because it's student run, it's much more genuine. As I said, I've been to 60 film festivals in my life as a filmmaker. And a lot of these film festivals, the folks running them, it's political, they're jaded. It's
just another number.
Exactly. And yet, because every year we have new people on the festival because of a new group of students, they're doing it the first time, so they're excited, they're enthusiastic. So I think that's part of the reason why the energy is always so great, because the 18 kids running the festival are new every year. I had a student say to me yesterday, he said, man, I was driving around Giancarlo and I had to tell people no pictures. He said, I couldn't handle it, the pressure. He said, I said, I could never teach you this in a class. And so when he said that to me, I said, yes, it's worth it, because this this student got an amazing experience. It's going to be a life-changing experience. And, I can go to bed at night knowing that I have done my best to try and train him to go out into the world and work in this industry.
And man, you have them in every single position. Like I was talking to the people that are next door to us, that they were some of your students, but they're up running the projections. And I mean, there's people that are like helping people with tickets and making sure that the banners, the step
marketing,
I mean,
VIP parties, everything.
Encompassing experience that a film festival is not just like, okay, we got some films, we got a theater, and now it's going to happen. It's like, no, there's the...
Well, that's what we do. I teach a class in the fall, and I divide the students up into categories to program the festival. So narrative shorts, documentary shorts, full-length so forth. And what those students do, we don't just open a Film Freeway account and hope we get submissions. They actually go out and find films. They look at films that do well at other festivals. They comb the internet, and then they reach out to the filmmaker and they say, hey, I'm the programming coordinator for music videos, the Las Cruces International Film Festival. Would you please submit to our festival? Here's a waiver. So our quality of our submissions are much higher than a festival our size would ever be, because we actually recruit films. And then those students in the spring, I divide them up and say, okay, you guys are doing marketing, you're doing VIP parties, you're doing filmmaker liaison, you're doing ticket sales, and then they run the festival.
And even we've had to deal with all the departments because they say, hey, can we get a screener for the film ahead of time, or let us know where we can find this, where we find that. Can you bring the filmmaker at this time? Can we do all of that? Has even been a reflection on how we're operating here. So we experience it firsthand, and then like Michael says, it's very professional. It's very legitimate. So I this is the second year we're involved, I think.
And so grateful to have you guys.
Me as an actor, I'm always like wondering, like, I've been seeing a lot of films. You guys have a lot of films. Do you think there's one genre that you may like, you want people like to explore more, that you don't see it a lot coming in through?
Well, I think the thing, I'm an independent filmmaker. I've done films at the studio level. I've sold, the first thing I did out of film school was I sold a script to 20th Century Fox. Then I sold a script to TriStar, and I was kind of running around in the studio world, and it was really not creatively fulfilling. And then I went to Sundance at the recommendation of a friend, and that's what changed my life, because I said, wow, this is independent filmmaking. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know what it was. And independent filmmaking is where the most interesting films are being made. That's where the risks are being taken creatively. And that's where I like intimate, character-driven stories. I like being creative, and you're not, Marvel's certainly not doing that, and that's what's come out in the theaters, Dungeons and Dragons. These are not the kind of films that I want to make. Those are not the kind of films I want to see. So I like edgy, interesting, risky, creatively endearing, intimate, character-driven stories. And that's what you're seeing in the independent film world, and that's what you're seeing at film festivals like our film. So those are the films we really look for. We look for films that otherwise wouldn't have a home were it not for us.
And we're talking to the director and the composer for Land of Dreams. And they were going to a lot of the screenings as well and saying how it's beautiful what's here, because you're seeing people who are taking those risks and trying different techniques and putting all the what is it called? All the textbook stuff aside, so that way they can really explore cinema and explore the art form. And to have a place like that here, it means so much to people, not only to the people watching it and expanding their minds on what's possible, but also to the people that are, seeing their film on the big screen for the first time when, we edit on these computers, and that's all you really get to see your film on.
And that's it, right? Because when you make a movie, you want it to be seen on the big screen with an audience, with surround sound. And most of the time, especially today, for an independent filmmaker, it's streaming, right? It's being watched on a computer screen, or God forbid, your phone. Or so that's the other reason why we do the festival. We did it, a few years ago during COVID. We did it virtually, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and I said, if I have to do this again, I won't do it. I didn't like the experience, and it wasn't what you don't need our film festival to stream movies. There are so many streaming services. You don't need us, right? Because people have said, well, why don't you do in person, live on screen, and do the? I said, you don't need us for streaming. There's so many streaming services. You need us to program and curate a slate of films you otherwise wouldn't get a chance to see were it not for us on the big screen, the way the movies are meant to be seen. And so that's why we're here, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, so that the filmmakers can see their film on the big screen. And the other thing we try to do, I believe film is literature. I used to have this argument. Mark Medoff was my mentor, my father-in-law, very famous writer here in Las Cruces. He used to say, you can't compare a great film to a great book. And I used to get in this argument all the time. I would say, absolutely, a great film is as moving psychologically, emotionally, spiritually as a great book. And I really believe that. I really believe a great film can change a person the way a great book can. I believe film is like literature. I think it is the 21st century form of literature. It used to be, 100 years ago, the creatives would say, I want to write the great American novel. Now they're coming out and saying, I want to make the great American film.
Absolutely.
Right? Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, all these great, filmmakers that 100 years ago would have been writing novels. Now they're making films.
That's true. Hey. Ross, what's some advice you can give to independent filmmakers out there as a buyer and as a seller, right? As a program director, as a festival director, and as a filmmaker, what's something you can tell people out there?
Two things that are really, really important in independent film. Number one, and I tell people this all the time, you got to get the script right. I see a number of filmmakers are so excited, enthusiastic, and they rush to go make their film when the script isn't ready.
Right.
And it's all about the story. It's all about the script. You can't make a good movie with a bad script.
Yeah.
Okay, so get the script right. And that's the least expensive part of making your movie is writing the script and developing the script. So write it, get feedback, do a table read, get feedback, rewrite it, get that script right. Make sure your story is strong. Make sure that it's going to move an audience. So number one is get the script right. Spend time getting the script in shape. And then the second thing is really balance your budget based on what you think that film can do. Because I think you have a responsibility when you make a film. You're doing it for yourself, obviously, at some level, but you're also doing it for an audience.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're raising money, whether it be from your parents, your dentist, or if you're going to production companies and distributors and so forth, if they're giving you money, you have a responsibility to make that money back. And not every film deserves to be $10 million. Right. So I talked to Jason Blum a couple of weeks ago. He bought my first film, his Blumhouse, and we were talking about a project I have, and he said, it sounds like about a $5 million film. I said, no, we need about $10, $12 million. And he says, I don't try to make that range. I said, why not? He says, because I want to make sure my films make their money back. And this is a guy that could make a $100 million movie if he wanted to. But he said, as a producer, my responsibility is make sure we make the film for the amount that I know the film will make getting back. And there's a formula. Every actor has a value. Right, so you cast a certain actor, you know what their value is overseas, and then you make the film for that budget. So rather than create a budget and say this is what I need to make the film, look at your script, look at the genre. How do those genres perform in terms of the box office, in terms of streaming, in terms of the different platforms where you can recoup your money. Look at the actors in it. If you have a script with no name actors, it's tougher to make your money back. So you should be making that at a lesser budget.
No, it's true. It's true. That's fantastic advice. Absolutely. The formula is right here. If you're listening. So we appreciate it, Ross. And again, we could be here hours talking about all of this stuff.
I love talking with you guys.
No, we appreciate it. And just stay tuned because just in the same episode, you're going to see a lot of the conversations that we had with these amazing filmmakers and Ross being one of them and being able to connect with us and connect us with other people to have the same vision and have the same values in cinema and how much we appreciate. This is why we're here.
I have to tell you guys, it is a lot of hard work for me. I'm not a young guy anymore. When I went to Sundance in '94, I was a young guy, and I'm an old man.
Top 30, 35?
Thank you. I've got kids almost there. But when I walk by this room, because I'm running up and down, like you said, and I see you guys with the lights on, the three of you, and your multi-camera setup and your mixer, and I see you guys, that energizes me. I said, I got to make sure these guys are jamming because they're here putting in their heart and soul and their hard work to celebrate independent film, and I got to do my part. So it energizes me. Every time I go down there and I see these lights and I see what you guys are doing, it fuels me. So thank you for motivating me and inspiring. You guys inspire me. So you really do. So
that means the world to us. So we appreciate that. So thanks so much, and obviously just stay tuned because we're the festival's just rocking and rolling, and we've been able to talk to a lot of people. And Ross, again, we can't thank you enough for having us be a part of this and seems like the feeling is mutual. We inspire each other. And
let's figure out the dates for now. Maybe we just leave the equipment here for next year.
We'll just leave it for next year.
Leave it here. We'll lock up the room. Come back next year. You're ready, set up.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Man.
Awesome. Well, again, stay tuned. We got somebody else coming up in the next portion of this episode. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and keep promoting everything that is independent cinema, all of the film festivals, both local and national, international. Please help us. We're independent filmmakers. The whole point of us making cinema is to share it with the world. So that's the goal. So thanks so much, Ross.
My pleasure.
Stick around.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the TowerCast podcast. We're still here at the Las Cruces International Film Festival and just been having a blast talking to all these awesome filmmakers,
Yes, we are.
storytellers, actors, all alike. We have two very special guests who are no shorter than that. You know, they're premiering a film here at the festival, and this film's called Abnormality, a feature film. And we're very excited to talk to Xzavier Estrada and Devin Macias. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Writer, director, and the lead in the
actor.
film, correct?
Sir.
Nice.
Awesome. So we always like to kick off the episode with how did your journey in storytelling begin?
So it all started in 6th grade.
Sixth grade, wow.
At Sierra Middle School.
Okay.
They had a media program there, and I was super into film. And so I just joined their media magnet there, and it kind of just took off from there. And then we started our first feature film back in 2020, and that we just had a private showing at the Rio Grande Theater.
Okay.
It wasn't released or anything, but now this film is on Amazon. It's released here, we had a whole premiere. So
Awesome.
just a big step from our previous one.
And you know, the whole point of this podcast is to encourage the next wave of storytellers, right? And let people know, like, if you truly love this, like, you should do this. You should go for it. You two are two young dudes. How old are you guys?
19.
Yeah.
Dang, man.
So it's a big deal to point that out because people, you're already on your second feature film, and it's a big deal to point that out. So that's awesome.
I gotta ask, what made you start into all this? Was it a movie, a director?
I'm gonna say the director, Quentin Tarantino, my favorite director of all time, and I want to get to his point of level of films. Maybe not his genre, but a very well known director, storyteller, writer. And that's my goal, is to be up there with him.
So. Was there a certain movie?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
The standard Pulp Fiction.
And with you, is it also Tarantino? Do you have something that wanted you to, or inspired you to get into acting?
Nothing really inspired me. It just kind of
just happened. It
Kinda
was,
just happened,
I brought him in, and
we were just friends growing up.
We were just friends growing up, and
That's awesome.
we got our first one, and I was like, dude, you need to be in my movie. And he was like, okay. And
It's just a natural.
Yep, and then we've
cool.
been together ever
You never
since,
took acting classes? You're one of those natural guys? That Robert Downey Jr.
I guess
type?
so.
Nice.
And now, is it like, I'm just gonna keep helping my buddy out, or do you like the craft? Are you wanting to explore more acting, or do you guys
For right now,
co-write or
I'm
anything
just
like
helping
that?
him, but
Okay.
I think I'm starting to like him
He's
more.
starting to
and
do it a
more.
little more.
Very cool. Very cool.
So we'll see where it goes. For
Yeah,
me, at
yeah.
least.
Yeah, sure.
That's cool.
So tell us a little bit about, much like most filmmakers, you jump into a short film or a couple, and then you gradually, hopefully, progress and graduate into features, right? But tell us about that kickoff when you made your first short and you knew this was what you wanted to pursue.
So in high school, they gave us a project. Me, because he didn't go to my school, but they gave me a project saying make a script and turn it into a movie trailer. So me and my classmates, we made a trailer, and I was like, hey, this is a really good story. Let's make it into a feature film. And so that's when I grabbed him and a couple other of my friends, and we made that film within a year. And this was during COVID too, so it was like virtual assignment. And I was like, hey, we need to get out there and do something. And so we made that within a year, and then, like I said, it premiered at the Rio Grande. And then now we just sort of stuck with the same people and wrote this next one, but really put it out there more. And so, most people start off with short films or something like that, but we actually made a 50-minute feature film for our first project together.
And this is your first time trying out the whole festival circuit?
Yeah, so I've been here. I come to this festival every year, but this is my first time having anything in the festival.
Wow, congrats, man.
Thank you.
Congrats. And for you to have a feature is a big deal. So that's kudos to that. So you get to a stage where you're comfortable with features. A lot of filmmakers don't get to that point for a couple years or maybe a couple of shorts even. How was that decision for you to say, you know what, we have enough time, resources, et cetera, to make a feature? again, Tarantino did a similar route, right? So maybe that's where you draw from, is him to just
that too, but also the COVID time. It was just we had so much time on our hands, and I didn't know when we were going to go back to school, when everything was going to open back up.
Yeah.
So I literally I had my writer. He wrote me the script, and I said we can get this done with plenty of time.
Sure.
So we literally just went out and just made it with all the time that we needed, and we took our time with it, and we didn't really feel like we needed to make a short because we had that time. Let's make a feature film instead of a short film.
Now, a lot of filmmakers that do that tend to, and we're of that school to a certain degree, school of thought to a certain degree, will say, well, instead of going to film school, I'm gonna make a feature film, and that's gonna be my film score. Are you guys of that? Because you're 19, you quote unquote should be in college, right? So, are you thinking of that route, or are you thinking more of that, like, we're just gonna keep making films?
I'm on the just go. I feel like college to me is not where I need to be right now. The business is just people. You need to know a bunch of people. You need to have experience.
Sure.
College is for knowledge, more of let's say it's on that point of view, and I feel like I got all the knowledge that I need personally from watching movies and from taking my classes in middle school. And so for me to go out there and actually make the film is my experience, and take that experience and go to people with it, and then just take those steps, and then boom, you get wherever you need to go.
They say the pros and cons for going to film school or going and just doing it is, like, all of us, we met kind of in film school, so it's having that community. Like, once you can find the people that really work well with you, then that's when we have kind of like our team that now we want to produce a project. We feel confident there, but it's good that you were able to find those people around you that, you could already start having that community. So now it's just jumping into it, I guess, trial by fire, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and learning along the way, right?
Tell us a little bit about Abnormality. Tell us to people who haven't seen the film. I mean, that's an Amazon.
You want to give us the elevator pitch to it?
You want to say that?
Me?
Yeah, explain it.
Why don't you go ahead and start it off?
Okay. So I don't know if you guys have heard of what's his name? What was that dude's name?
Oh, Ryan Reynolds.
Right.
The guy who was based off of.
Oh, Christopher.
Yes, his name is Christopher. I can't think of the last name. Anyways, there was a true story in Colorado. He killed his wife and his 2 daughters, and he shoved them in the oil tanks and went through that. Have you heard of that story?
Yeah, Watts.
Yeah.
Chris Watts.
Oh,
dude, I know everything about that.
That's his name. So that's what the movie is inspired by.
Okay.
So he plays Chris in a way, but it's not Chris. It's a different guy.
Right, yeah.
So it's inspired by. So he kills his wife and his 2 daughters, and he gets arrested, and he gets in jail. But we're telling the story of what would happen if he was ever to be released from prison. What would he go and do? Because in prison, they gave him sort of a new treatment that they're working on in the jails to, like, cure crazy people.
Right.
So he gets a treatment that's tested on him, and it works, and it goes through their system, and it works. He gets released. So now it's like, what is he going to do now that he's out and he committed this crime? But his wife is the wife of the main detective working on, the sister of the detective working on the case.
Okay.
So he kills his brother-in-law's sister.
Right.
So he's related to the detective working on the case.
Okay.
So it's kind of like them going back and forth, like, what the heck is going on, And he's messing with the detective when the detective knows this dude shouldn't be out of jail. When everybody's like, chill out, the test worked, it's okay. You just need to.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to process, but just relax. That's what.
Did you think of that idea once you saw, like, the crime happening, like when it happened?
Yeah, and the reason why we didn't base it directly off of him is because we don't have permission, we don't have all that kind of stuff. So we're going around it and flipping the story type of thing.
Smart.
So that's great, guys. Now, you're born and raised in Las Cruces, but both of you
Yes.
were. Now, how does it feel to have your film premiere at your home festival? I mean, that's gotta. We've had that happen a few times, and it's always a good feeling, right?
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we like I feel like New Mexico is it's growing with the film industry, and I feel like everything everything here is what you need to start off with to get your career going.
Sure.
So for us to have our feature film start here could potentially give better opportunities for the both of us.
Right.
And it's just a great place to build your career.
And what type of like advice did you give this guy to like, get into character?
To get into character?
On the acting.
I made him watch the
Ridiculous.
documentary.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
You never really gave me too much
I
advice.
didn't. I honestly just let him take it over.
I like that.
Yeah.
So you're free to just.
So all the resources we had was
Yeah.
the documentary, and
Uh-huh.
that was it. And he just took it over.
I just tried my best.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Did you feel any stress going into an acting role like that, especially for a feature? I feel like
That's a good question.
you're not like, jumping into shorts and then, you build up and then you start acting for a full feature. But I mean, did you feel any of that pressure kind of going into this?
In the beginning, yes.
Mm.
Because the first one, there was no pressure. It was just me having fun with
Yeah.
my friends.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in the second one, there was actually people telling us what to do and like helping us. There was a lot more people. So I did feel the pressure in the beginning, but towards the end, no.
Wow.
I'm just along with it.
And how big was the crew for the whole project?
We had
For the first one, it was just
for the first one, it was like 8 of us.
Oh, okay.
8.
No budget, I'm assuming.
No budget, and just
Was that
Doing
different
whatever
this
we
time
could.
around? Did the resources kind of expand?
oh yeah,
a little
it
more?
was completely different. Where locations were different. We got a lot more in the city.
Mm.
When the last one, we were just in a warehouse,
Okay.
and in
my
the
grandma's
desert.
warehouse.
Yeah.
And is there any interesting stories? Like something happened?
Stories
You
from the
guys
set,
improvise?
anything.
I know we almost got jumped on
Whoa,
set.
whoa, whoa, what's that about?
Yeah, on our last one, we were filming like it was almost midnight because we needed to do a night scene,
Right.
and we were filming on the side of the road, like on the sidewalk, and this car drives by us, and they reverse to stop, and this dude jumps out of the window
Mhm.
and comes up to us, and what was he saying? Like we were making
was
fun
just
of his mom,
Yeah.
and it was just some random thing.
Jeez.
He was
An
saying that his
episode.
mom died recently.
Yeah, and then
And
like
his
we were
eyes were,
making
like,
fun of him.
bloodshot
Yeah,
red.
it was kind of scary.
Yeah.
But then you get out of it, you just walked out.
Yeah, he just walked away. Hopefully, luckily, he just left where we were at.
And I had my mask on, so I'm like, crap, this is gonna think I'm some kind
Right.
of monster.
Yeah.
or something.
yeah. Just having an episode. Oh shit! There he is.
Ah, that's crazy. Well, that's fantastic, guys. I mean, kudos to you guys for being
Yes.
engaged HR and getting
At
things
19 years
done.
old?
Yeah, man, that's
I like
something
that,
that we're
man.
encouraging people to do. Is just go for it and do what you got to do. Get the resources you can. Make films with your friends, but ultimately tell the stories you love, right?
Right.
So, what can people look forward to coming up? What do you guys got coming
Coming
down
up?
the pipeline?
So we are taking a huge step, and we are getting a way bigger budget,
Okay.
a lot more people involved. So it's this last movie times 3
Mm.
with the whole production. It's called The Apple Orchard,
Okay.
and you guys can look it up on IMDb if you guys want to check it out. But that's all we can say so far. But we're looking at Ross Marks hopefully being a part of the project.
Nice.
Okay.
And hopefully bringing down some Hollywood actors to be in it.
Cool.
So,
Are you in a pre right now or?
yeah, so we're on the beginning stages of the scripts. We haven't wrote the script yet. We're just creating the world of the film.
That's
And
awesome.
when is the casting?
When is it gonna be?
It's a fellow
I don't know
actors,
yet. But yeah, we got that coming up, and then we are also doing a short film. I want to dive into the shorts as well,
Short.
just to get
Stay
just
with
to
it. Yeah,
stay
yeah.
with it. So
Yeah, exactly.
we're gonna come up with the short and do that as well. So we got 2 big projects coming up.
Very cool, man. Well, congratulations and stay tuned for all of their work. Thank you guys for talking to us
Thank
on the
you, thank you.
podcast. And stay tuned. We got more people coming through and talking to us about film.
Thank you.
Go down, man. Welcome back to the TowerCast podcast, the towering podcast for the
Yes.
towering filmmaker of El Paso in the world. We are here at the Cruces International Film Festival, and this collection of this particular episode is just talking to all the amazing filmmakers, indie in the studio, and just everybody coming through to celebrate cinema. That's what film festivals are for, right? So we have a very unique perspective. You know who these guys are, so we've introduced these guys.
We're still here.
We're still around. Thank you to Austin, making sure we're sounding good. We have the awesome people, minus one, right, from Femme Frontera, and you couldn't make it today. But we have Jackie Barragan and Ryan Rocks. Thank you guys for being on.
Thank you for having us.
So we always like to kick off with, how did your storytelling journey begin? Tell us a little bit about that perspective, and whoever wants to go first.
I always let Jackie go.
So actually, I have to give a lot of credit to Femme Frontera, which is an organization that was started 7 years ago. Angie Torres and a group of other female filmmakers from the border decided to just put together a showcase highlighting their films. And they did it in El Paso, and they thought it was just going to be a one-time thing. But so many people were thirsty for that kind of content.
When was this? What year did Femme Frontera really kick off?
7 years ago, yeah. So
Okay.
yeah,
2016-ish.
yeah.
That's when we got started, actually.
Really.
Yeah, our company.
And Angie had just gotten back from film school in San Francisco. We're so lucky that she came back here because a lot of times people leave our city, the talent takes off. And so the fact that she came back just like really created a lot of opportunities for women and non-binary filmmakers on the border. And so I would go to those film festivals since the very, very beginning. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, but so many people wanted it, so it ended up becoming a yearly thing. And then they started looking for funding, and then before you know it, it was a full-fledged organization that was we provide classes, workshops, filmmaking workshops in the summer, and also grants. And we have a showcase.
So you started as an attendee, in other words, and now what's your role in Femme Frontera?
So 3 years ago, during the pandemic, I received a small grant for my first film, a story that I feel like I'm fueled from my personal experiences and then seeing a lack of content in the media and in film that I can identify with, right?
Sure.
And so I had my mother's story in the back of my mind, and I just applied for this grant, and Angie was a really big motivator. She's like, you need to just do this. It's a great story. Like sometimes you just need somebody to believe in you,
absolutely.
you know? And so I ended up winning that grant, and then a part of the package was I was able to put my first film in the Femme Frontera showcase 3 years ago. And it was just an incredible moment where
what was the name of the picture?
It's called Josie, named after my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josie.
My mom was a retired, she retired undefeated as a martial artist.
Oh, wow.
And she studied in
I
Juarez.
remember this. Oh,
You
okay.
do?
Wow. Okay, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, and so it's difficult. The content of it, the reason why was because she went through an attack and abuse, and she wanted to seek revenge. So and so her story is incredible. Like I said, I was like, this is one of those stories that needs to be shared, especially
This Kill Bill set in El Paso.
very much so.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
And I would love to create a feature film because it had to fit under 15 minutes.
Right.
So it was a
Was this through MCAT, the grant?
No,
or
it was
this
through a local artist named Xochi Rodriguez started a program called the Caldo Collective. And her vision, like people should take up this model, was really interesting. But she would have a different house every year would host a event, and they would have caldo. And at first, there would be a soup, and so people would buy some food. The first couple ones was just beans, like a bowl of beans in the backyard. She called it the Frijol Fest. And so 5 artists were chosen to pitch their ideas.
Okay.
And so I was one of the artists 3 years ago, and the entire audience, which was like 100 to 200 people, they had been, selling tickets for the food, and then they could give extra donations for the artists.
Right.
And the audience votes on the crowd votes on which artist should receive those funds.
Okay.
Wow.
And I won.
Wow.
And so it was a very cool kind of grassroots way of building up micro funds for artists.
Sure.
So that's how that started. It wasn't through MCAT. And so I got my film in the showcase, and I was, it was quarantine COVID time, and I was in between employment.
Yeah.
And Femme Frontera ended up receiving a grant from the Ford Foundation, an $80,000 grant.
Wow.
And I was like, if you want to hire somebody, I would love to
Very
work
cool.
for this team. And
Yeah.
so she ended up hiring me on the team. And so it's been 3 years, and I handle the showcase tour every year, which is why we're here today. The entire 7th annual showcase is screening here at the Las Cruces Film Festival, and I'm also the director of community engagement. So how do we create events and ways of networking in the border? Las Cruces, we're focusing on Las Cruces, Juarez, and El Paso,
Sure.
and streamlining this this help, like we're kind of separated by these borders, even from El Paso to Las Cruces,
right?
right?
Right.
And especially across the border.
And they're kind of proverbial borders to a certain degree too, especially Las Cruces. That's something we're talking to Ross about on the podcast, that we need to bridge that gap in any way, shape, or form. And it's not just film production. It's not just community, so that filmmakers can feel like they can connect with other filmmakers, period.
Exactly.
So that's massive. That's massive. Ryan, how about you?
So I've always wanted to do something with film, but I never thought I could. And it's funny, like the full circle. I feel like there's so many full circle aspects of when you like are in film.
Yeah.
But the director of the Las Cruces International Film Festival, Ross Marks, when he brought his first feature film, Walking with Her, to Las Cruces, that was the first time I thought, or I knew that you could do film in Las Cruces. What? They do that here in Mexico? I didn't know. And so that kind of like sparked my interest.
Was there a film or mentor or anybody that like, I guess you saw or went to the theater and then thought like, this is what I want to do as a career and kind of move forward?
Well, I wanted to be an actor. So I've always wanted to do that. I just didn't think you could. And so that start with background acting in his film led me to, seek out films like Tower Production short films.
You're the background talent for a couple or for shorts. I think
my first one was like right after that. I think I worked with you on it was a courtrum one.
Assumed. We did Assumed down in Tacoma. That's right. Yeah.
So that was like my first.
And it's great
film.
because you've come a long way since and are now producing your own pictures and directing and writing and whatnot, but and acting in lead roles naturally, right? But we were always like, it's Ryan's doing the damn thing. That's awesome. So that's fantastic. So going from background talent into writing and directing, you talk a little bit about that because you do have quite a few films either that you acted in or wrote, directed.
Is there like a director that you kind of admire, kind of like biting off?
Yeah, I hate to say Quentin Tarantino because it's just everybody's answer, but I mean, there's just something about starting off in film and it's just the go-to. But since then, I mean, I started looking into more like trans and non-binary and queer directors that I look up to and women like Charlotte Wells and people like Sam Levinson and Ryan Murphy and Euphoria.
I love Ryan Murphy. Like I'm a big musical guy. I write musicals and Ryan's just fantastic. He's been and during the pandemic, watching Hollywood was just something I was like, why is nobody paying attention to this terrific series? But Ryan.
Films like that or television shows like that too, where they're not afraid or they don't have to be afraid to push boundaries.
Absolutely.
Have nudity and male nudity, which I'm all about like seeing things I would have wanted to see when I was young. There's women's bodies all over the place, but not necessarily men's. So
that's
I like to objectify men in movies.
That's fantastic. So I feel like in the past couple of years, seeing the progression, and this correlates directly with Fem Frontera, right? How did you come across Fem Frontera? And a lot of your films have been, I think you also got a grant through them recently and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that connection?
The reason I started making films was, it was a pandemic, nothing to do. And as an actor, there was nothing filming. So I thought, okay, people say to make your own content and make a reel and send the reel to an agent or agents and see what you get out of that. And so I was originally kind of just trying to pass the time, give my actor and crew friends work, and go from there. I ended up falling in love with the process. Something about writing something and then like realizing it and seeing it on screen is just so like beautiful. And so I never stopped after that. I made 4 films. But that first film, Crawl, actually I submitted to Fem Frontera, and it was, I think it was 23 minutes or something, and they had to be like 15 and 20. And so Angie didn't want to just reject it and not say anything. So she reached out to me and said, Ryan, I'm so sorry. It doesn't fit in our showcase. But like, I want you to continue. Like, please keep going. And so I did. And I applied to the grant last year in 2022 and got funding from the filmmaker grant that we have every year. And that's how I funded shipping them.
That's the one that got
which is part of this year's showcase.
Awesome. Well, we know you are gearing up for this block, so we don't want to keep longer. But a couple more things. number one, what can we look forward to? What's coming up in the pipeline that you can talk about, both of you? I mean, collectively, but and yeah, what can we look forward to? What could our audience kind of be looking out for?
Yeah, I'm working on my first feature film finally.
Awesome.
So it's called Hidden Flora, and it's a queer romantic dramedy. And I've cast a lot of non-binary folks from our area, and it's important for me to have queer people not only in front of the camera but behind the camera too. So some of my crew are either queer or allies. I always make sure. So that'll come out probably next year, hopefully.
Next year?
Yeah.
Next year.
Awesome. So keep a lookout for that.
Yeah,
Jackie,
so
anything we could...
Yeah, so I'm working on a documentary about the river, about the Rio Grande. Working with PBS, a program called Hindsight. And they wanted to see environmental issues that are happening on the border. And so I chose the river, and it's going to be like a poetic documentary coming from my perspective. I live nearby it, and I'm always there. And just like, why is it that there's no water the majority of the year in our area? And also what happened to the river and to the life around it when it became such a solidified political divide. And I'm going to talk about how my grandmother came across that river with my mother on her back, and how migration is a human right. And I know that's a very controversial topic, but not only has that river caused a division with humans, but animal migration has been affected. And like the cottonwood trees are disappearing because of how drought is now affecting that area. And so there's just this interconnection that we have with nature. And when we impose ourselves and try to control it, there's all these repercussions. And so that's
massive.
I have to do all that in a matter of 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Wow, man.
So
it's important.
It's going to be a punchy 8 minutes.
And us being from the border, it's something that we really need to bring a light to. So that's fantastic. So please be on the lookout for that. The last question, as we always like to ask, do you have any advice for storytellers that are either just getting started or needing to push through or needing some type of motivation to keep going? Anything that you've picked up on your journey this far?
Well, I just want to bring it back to Femme Frontera. The reason why the organization was created was because I love men. I love my dad. I have a boyfriend and everything. But a lot of these industries, and particularly the film industry, is dominated by men.
Sure, absolutely.
And so, and on the set, a lot of times, like, women's voices aren't really respected, or we're not valued. And, what we want to get to the point where we don't have to say you're a female filmmaker, a non-binary filmmaker. You're just a filmmaker, and you're equal, right? And so I want to just send a message to, to women and non-binary filmmakers to know that, like, we have all these resources for them, and to find a support group that is encouraging and is motivating them. And every year we offer grants. We have those classes. Awesome. We're trying to create a community of support, because I know there's a lack of storytelling when it comes from our perspective, and it's like our perspective isn't. It can't be put in a certain category. Like, there's so much we have to say, and it's exciting, and it can be sexy, and it can be fun, and it can also be challenging, and it can also be hard, and it's ours.
Your voice.
And like you said, it also comes from the fact that it's developing that community, because without that community and without that support, then a lot of people can feel isolated and like they're not able to break in any way. And it's great that you're saying that you're trying to have both non-binary people and queer people, like, in front of the camera and behind the camera, because that's how the voices and the messages get shared. So
exactly.
And like, people, I guess queer and trans people probably don't think they can do it, or there's no space for them, because they don't see any kind of representation of that in the media, on screen or behind the camera. And so I think it's so important to just give those voices a voice and a platform. And so I hope to do that with my films and my career in the little way that I can, even just making films of queer joy instead of queer trauma, like a lot of cis people make. So
that's important. We talk about that all the time, how, like, we go to the cinema to see something that naturally, of course, something that's going to impact, but also we like to feel good. There has to be that balance, right? So that's a fantastic perspective given the climate today.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Well, you're here on the TowerCast podcast. We're literally holding them up. There's somebody waiting for you guys outside the window already. But thank you guys for your perspective, and thank you for the work you're doing through Femme Frontera and just your independent filmmaking as well. Keep please keep encouraging filmmakers to connect. Period. Just no women, no men, no filmmakers. Let's connect. So that's massive. Stay tuned. We got other great people coming on the podcast, talking to more filmmakers here at the Las Cruces International Film Festival. Thank you to Femme Frontera, Angie. Thank you for doing what you're doing, organizing this as well, and doing what you're doing with Femme Frontera. So we'll connect soon. But thank you all so much for tuning in, and keep a lookout for their work.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Welcome back to the TowerCast podcast. We're here at the Las Cruces International Film Festival. We're happy to be back. We've been talking to a lot of people, lots of great people, and the show keeps going. We have an amazing guest, Mr. Michael Lalao, cinematography perspective.
Always cinematography perspective.
Mr. John Eric Castro.
Giving you the acting perspective.
And I'm your fellow film humble servant, Carlos de la Torre, just giving you a writing, directing perspective. We have an amazing guest today. And I got to thank Austin for making sure we're sounding good and making sure we're looking good down there.
He's even taking pictures.
And he's even taking pictures, being our PR guy,
amazing.
too. We have a very special guest. We're talking to Tryon, and he's here with Land of Dreams specifically, but he has a plethora of amazing work. He produces, he writes, he directs, he does it all.
Jack of all trades.
But I'd love to get all of the perspective of all these amazing things, but thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
So, big thing we like to kick off with is how did you become a storyteller? What's the story there? How did you?
The big question.
This is a crazy industry to get into to begin with. We know this. We all know this. Why did you specifically want to become a storyteller?
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up in Maine, and my mom was an artist, so I always went to
Into the arts.
galleries and all that sort of stuff, but never, and I always made films in high school and things like that, but never in my wildest dreams thought about actually being a filmmaker. It was not something even on my radar at all until about a year after I graduated high school, and I kind of traveled around. I went to another liberal arts school for a semester, and again, all my friends were artists, and I was studying storytelling, but through anthropoly and mythology and things like that. And then my mom was like, you always liked making movies. Wow. And so she got me a young filmmakers workshop kind of program for
Shout out to the
my
moms.
birthday.
This was college, more or less?
This was I was 19, 18, something like that. And I did that workshop, and I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do.
I think everybody has that aha moment, right?
Yeah.
That
What was it about the workshop?
it kind of put it all together for me. I grew up playing sports, and I was way into the team sport aspect of stuff.
Collaborative.
And then also in the arts, and I was kind of hey, this kind of feels right. It feels like all of the things that I love. I love storytelling, I love art, I love teamwork, and just the vibe of creating in that way was just
everybody
felt
on the
great,
same page, wanting to do something.
Yeah. And then I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I thought maybe when I started I would do cinematography, because I was really into the visual art aspect of it. But then the further I got into schooling, and I kind of really started enjoying the aspect of just telling stories and being able to actually tell it from the whole picture of it, And then so I started focusing more on directing. And then I did 2 years, got my Associate of Arts degree at the workshops that I went to. It was a little school in Maine, and then I moved to New York City. And I had an opportunity to actually intern on a feature film when I was in Maine first.
What was the feature film?
It's called Dark Harbor.
Dark Harbor.
Yeah. And it was an New York independent film. And a lot of amazing people involved in the project, and just had an awesome experience.
I always got to ask my question. Was there a movie, actor, director that just inspired you?
Even growing up, right? You said you made films.
Yeah, that one film or that
you just
one.
saw The Fablemans, right? So
I mean, so many, right? They're just, as a kid watching things like Star Wars.
Also, you're Star Wars, okay.
I mean, I wouldn't say I am, because I'm definitely much more on the indie side of stuff.
Absolutely.
But as a kid, seeing Star Wars and seeing Indiana Jones and those things, kind of
those
got me
big
excited
epics,
about
right?
stuff.
Yeah.
And then the more I got refined, getting into stuff like Jim Jarmusch and finding my niche of stuff that I really like to see, and the stories I like to tell, and I really like. I like films that kind of tell things, and they aren't the straightforward path necessarily, right? They kind of tell a story by expressing stuff and creating conversation, creating thought through a narrative, but the narrative really kind of backs up the conversation that we're trying to have, So
that's like a big reason why we even started like the podcast, because it's crazy how
Yeah.
film inspires conversations afterwards. I mean, we all hope that when we make something, people leave the theater and not just talk about the film, but also talk about their own personal life and how they connect with it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Now, so you get this kind of big opportunity on an indie set. Is this something that you think, I love this collaborative front on this level, or were you kind of seeking just any project out to kind of get out there, keep building for that?
I just kind of like, I through that project, I was able to get an internship on my winter break in New York City, and I kind of went down to New York City, and I was like, this is kind of cool, this is interesting. And then I graduated, and I went down, and through my relationships with all the people in New York, I was like, I'm moving right to New York City, and I had work right away. And I, started as a PA, and I, kind of worked my way up to AD first, and then line producer, and then I produced my first film called Bomb the System that came out in 2003.
Bomb the System.
And it's a graffiti art movie. And then, and actually, very early in my career, I started working with Tryon, the director for Land of Dreams.
Okay.
I think I AD'd first for her and Shoja in 99?
Wow. Okay.
Something like that. 2000, somewhere in that range. We were doing a video art installation, and so started kind of that collaboration then.
A little bit of a full circle moment then with coming to this picture. Right?
Yeah, I worked with them for years, and then after I directed my first film, things kind of went a little bit differently, and hadn't worked with them for a number of years, and then. About 5 years ago, I kind of was like, hey, I want to come back and collaborate. And we'd always stayed in touch. We were always friends the whole time.
Right. Yeah.
But it was kind of the opportunity presented itself. I took a break and kind of ran a production company for a long time. And so I wasn't doing the indie film thing.
Right.
I mean, I was doing indie films, but I was doing it from running a production company versus the freelance kind of thing.
From seller to buyer almost, right? I mean, it's
well, I mean, the production company I ran was very much like doing indies, mostly documentaries and things like that. But it wasn't, it wasn't doing her movies.
Right. Now, when it comes to that people seem to be drawn to a certain thing, and I know you direct and you write and you do all these things, but producing is a strength of yours naturally.
Sure.
So, how did you know that was something you wanted to keep? I mean, that line is pretty clear: AD to line producer to producer. How do you know that? How did you know that producing was something that I can do this?
It's something that has always kind of just come naturally to me in the sense of like it's always about. I like throwing parties. I like making sure people have what they need. Sure. I like making sure that things are. I like having an understanding of all aspects of what's going on,
Makes sense.
and having a say and being part of the conversation in all ways and all aspects, from story to budget to distribution, and it gets frustrating, but
people don't understand that that's its own form of storytelling. Like legitimately seeing the logistics of it all. I mean. As a director that you couldn't do what you do without a producer who's really constantly hammering these things out.
Now I want to be a producer, dude.
But I mean, I think it's a special thing. It's its own form of storytelling and its own form of putting these things together. Because you, I think, out of everybody on the set, has to believe in the story months before we're even rolling a camera. So I think that's a very special thing. And I think I always say the producers are the underdogs, the guys who don't get enough credit. So. That's awesome. I think it's its own form of storytelling.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the directing side of you, what do you feel? Did you feel like there's specific films, specific stories that you can only tell a specific way? What drew you to that?
I mean, I really like comedies. Is one thing. I like making interesting, quirky kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The first film I made is called The Living Wake. It's with Jesse Eisenberg and Jim Gaffigan and Ann Dowd, and is totally like a cult classic style film. And it was a lot of fun and something totally different. It's the sort of thing, I like movies that, people either love it or they hate it.
Comedy seems to be the most stressful genre to make.
But you want to tell that specific story in that specific way. Nobody can pull you away from that. And that's important.
Absolutely. And that's really so much of what it's about. Like I always want to make films that have something to say. And I have to fully believe in what the purpose is of what I'm trying to say through the film,
Sure.
And so I think that's really important. And, again, in the collaboration element of it, like my wife and I write together, which is an exciting thing, and we're actually going to start directing movies together too.
Awesome.
Which is great. And she was in Land of Dreams as well. She's a musician too, and she plays like the singer in the bar.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Yeah, so it's
awesome.
It's fun to have that collaboration in life and in art in all aspects.
And then you have kids, so you have future crew that's going to be coming on the way, right?
Exactly. True. They tried to be on this crew, but we shot during pandemic, so it was
oh my god,
it was hard to get them on the set. The unions are like, no.
We've obviously before we get into Land of Dreams, which we have to hit on. It's the opening night film, right? But I'm sure you've had some stories either as a producer or director with the different actors, a different person. Now it is a collaborative front. You very much do have to hopefully get along with the people you're working with for 6 months, a year at a time, right?
Oh man, it's more like 3 years, 5 years.
You're attached to
You're
people.
committed to this.
Are there something you could, I know we don't have a ton of time, but a couple stories you could tell us about, hey, when I was working with Eisenberg or with Gaffigan, I mean, we love comedy, right? So, or just anything, you a memory that you favor that you're like, oh man, when I was on this set, we did a lot of this,
I mean, there's like, again, every movie, there's a million stories that come out of it because it is just, it's an experience, it's a challenge, it's a struggle, it's a joy, you literally cry, laugh, all aspects of it.
That is true.
So let's see. I mean, shooting in the Living Wake is one. We were there. It was in Maine in the late fall, and it started getting cold, and we're shooting nights, exterior nights, and the movie's about it's a living wake. It's about a guy who finds out he's got this degenerative disease that nobody knows anything about except for the exact moment of his death, which is sort of the specific time. And so he creates his own living wake where he recruits all the local townspeople to his final performance piece because he looks at himself as this undiscovered genius artist, and so he scripts his final moment. And anyway, so we're shooting that whole sequence,
right?
And it was freezing cold, and there's like, Jim Gaffigan and Jesse, and it was before they were like huge, but it was we were all huddled around this like campfire, trying to keep it, and I'm like feeling like the Pied Piper out there, being like, I can't go to that campfire, I gotta stay on set, I gotta be the guy that's like, everybody's like, okay, if he's gonna be doing it,
exactly,
I'm gonna be doing it.
You gotta show,
right,
and I just remember my like fingers are going numb, my toes are going numb, and I'm like, all right, we got it, and then I'm asking actors, can you come back tomorrow? And they're like, no, I can't come back tomorrow. I was like, okay, we got to finish now, and it's going to get light in a few hours, So that was just kind of like one of those moments of like, oh my God, what am I doing?
It made you a better man.
I love how everybody had those experiences. Like we were shooting like a date night film, but it's like a summery date night film. But the entire time it was freezing and windy and everything. So they're like trying to look all like cute, and you acted in it. I mean, you're just like, oh, let's go and hold hands. And then the second we say cut, throw a jacket on both of them. Like,
huddle them around a fire.
That was great, actually. In that moment too, during one of those scenes, and my wife played one of the characters in the film too, and she kind of goes up to, after the main character passes away, spoiler alert, but she like kind of goes up and blesses him, and she plays like a fortune teller, and she like does this moment, and right as she does it, all these wolves start to howl. And it was like,
that's
oh my God,
I love it.
Those happy little accidents, right?
Totally.
I mean, awesome. Land of Dreams.
Yes.
We're here, right? This is the film that's premiering tonight, or the opening night of the festival, rather. And man, you had to get together this amazing cast and crew. Can you talk a little bit about what this experience was like for Land of Dreams?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it starts with Shireen and Shoja, and they're in Hassem and their sort of passion and art and beauty and all of this incredible energy that they have.
Sure. And
that we kind of reconnected, and we were like, let's collaborate on this together. And it was the first movie she was shooting in the US and in English, and so it was kind of like really exciting for me in a lot of ways, because I've filmed stuff with them all over the world and done different things, and always most of the time the language was in Farsi, and I was always kind of like the token white guy kind of like going around on the productions with them.
Right.
But this time it was like it was a really exciting experience in that way, and just COVID, really was like made things hard, right? So we were getting everything rolling. We came and we scouted, and we were like, all right, great, we're going to put all these pieces together.
Was this predominantly shot in New Mexico? Or
all in New Mexico.
All in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think it was in 2020, we had come and scouted in January. And we were like, everything was rolling. And I had another movie that I was shooting in Armenia in between. Wow. So I was like, I was there in pre-production and I flew over here to scout for this. And the cinematographer was doing that movie with me too. And then we both flew back to Armenia to go and do production after we had scouted here. And the idea was we were going to go shoot there, fly back here, go right into production on this. Wow. And then COVID hit, right? And it was day 13, I think, of the movie we were doing in Armenia. And that everything just went
shut down.
You know, like what's going on? And I had my family was here and everything. I had to like get out of Armenia.
Right.
Yeah, he stayed with the director and our camera operator.
Oh man.
Stayed in Armenia and waited it out.
Yeah.
You know, and they ended up finishing the movie in like July.
Wow.
And then by that time we were getting things up and running here. It was like, okay, well, it looks like things are gonna open up in like late August, early September.
Wow, it was looking like that,
You know, and we were like, oh man, we gotta pull this because we know there's gonna be another wave.
Yeah.
They're gonna open up and then it's gonna close again, right? We gotta do this. And so just put that pressure on it. It just made it's like, okay, every single thing has got to go. We're like, okay, budget, like all aspects of it, like whatever it takes, whatever we got to do, whatever we got in place.
We speak your language in that
regard. And it was
regard,
literally like, you know, we made the call, I think like August 15th or something. It's like, okay, we're doing it. We're going.
Everybody hit there now.
And was it, I mean, because you also have to commit, it's not just convincing the crew because we're always ready to go, right? But it's convincing cast who are coming out from different parts of the world. I mean, was it hard to get these people out and say, hey, we have the protocols, we're going to be safe, let's get you out here? Or how, was that a challenging part at all?
Yes and no. I mean, some of them, it was like, absolutely, everybody was just stoked to be able to work.
Yeah.
But there was definitely some, we had to recast some characters, and we ended up, and it was funny because we ended up coming up with the idea of casting characters, like one actor to play two parts. And then we were like, that's interesting. And then we did it a few more times just because we liked the idea that fit with the film. We're like, this is kind of cool, you know? And then like, Isabella Rossellini was a challenge because she was supposed to be here and supposed to come to New Mexico to film, but she was kind of like, it was later in the production and things had started to kind of pick up again with COVID. And so she was like, I can't go and I'm just nervous about it. And, we're like, where are we going to find another Isabella Rossellini who's willing to travel to come to New Mexico? And I don't think we're going to find it in New Mexico. And we got to, and so that was kind of one of those things of like, all right, what are we going to do? We're going to figure this out, right? We're not going to not cast Isabella Rossellini. So instead of her being there at the party, we're like, she's going to, and it's COVID, we're all doing virtual stuff. Like, let's make her virtually here. Wow. And we just kind of like made that work and made that call. And in the end, I think it really added to the scene. It really works and makes something those are the beautiful things that just kind of like come up,
the problem solving that ends up creating a even better final product, right?
Totally.
And the mentality of like, we're going to make it work. I don't know. It's going to work.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
So there was a lot of challenges, but at the same time, so I mean, like people like William Moseley coming from the UK and like trying to get his visa was such a challenge, and we had to, and it was all compressed, and they were like, "Oh no, visas are taking like 3 times longer than normal," and it was like, "Wait, but we got to get him here. And how are we gonna do this?"
And at that point, is Matt just like sitting around and like, I think I'm here. I'll stick around. Just let me.
No, this was all happening in the lead up, and like it was all like William was supposed to be here like day 1, and it ended up having to be like day 4 that he arrived and to come. All this sort of stuff. It's just the challenges, but finding, I mean, that's what producing is, right? You find a way through it, make it happen however it can. And you try to have it be all the challenges be as small of an influence as possible on the film and everybody else involved, right? That's the challenge. You never, fully succeed in doing that, but So there was quite a few challenges, many of them COVID inspired.
The journey.
But yeah, that's the journey, and it was really fun and such an amazing thing, and the crew was awesome. The cast was amazing, and it was also wonderful because it was like this time of COVID where we're all like been locked down for months. Then here we are in New Mexico, and all of us that had traveled here, right? We're being tested constantly. And so it's like, we can have dinner together. We can actually meet up. And here we are. So it's like, great. Here's all these amazingly talented actors and producers and directors and cinematographers. And we're like, all right, we're the locals, they had their families. They were like, we couldn't really socialize with them. But the people that were from out of town, we were able to have like smaller little kind of like gatherings.
Intimate.
That we were already on the same like, groupings,
Yeah,
for
sure,
SAG's
sure.
restrictions and all that sort of
Right,
stuff,
right.
right?
Yeah,
So,
compared to everybody else that had Zoom parties,
Right,
because
yeah.
we couldn't have that.
yeah. So
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you obviously produce this amazing film, and I think it's got that special. You're going to be able to look back and say, yeah, these challenges were this, but we got this amazing work
Product
out of
out of
it.
it,
This
yeah.
product out of it.
yeah.
We've taken too much of your time, but if there's anything we can ask, is we always like to ask our guests. Is there anything you could say, advice, some type of inspiration for the next wave of storytellers? Anything that you've learned along your journey that you could say, this is what you got to do if you want to get into this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, always follow the stories that inspire you. That's the simple, easy one.
Absolutely.
And the thing I always like to tell the young filmmakers is like, look, if you're getting into this because you think it's something you like and you think it's going to be cool and you think it's going to be fun, go do something else.
Yeah.
Because you need to like, you only want to do this if this is something you have to do. That
Right.
You're willing to get beat up, knocked down, rejected every single day for years sometimes, and still get up and keep going and keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you can do it because it's torture.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's torture,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's worth it if
Yeah.
you have to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
If it keeps you up at night,
Yeah.
if there's a story
and just
you
keep
have
going,
to
keep
tell.
going,
Yeah.
keep going, keep going. You know,
Keep going. Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna happen. It'll work. Don't stop.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
No, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much.
I want to run right now, dude.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
man.
thank you
And,
guys.
I mean,
Pleasure to be here.
You have an
Amazing.
amazing
Thank you
body
so
of work, so we can't wait for the next thing, and hopefully we'll see that
Absolutely.
soon.
Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Oh, and check out my next one, Americasi, the one I was shooting in Armenia at the time. It's
Americasi.
coming out in theaters in September across the country.
Nice.
Americasi.
Yeah, check
Yeah,
it
that
out.
was
It's
We've
great.
had the awesome Soul Tryon on the TowerCast. Okay, so stay tuned. We have a lot of amazing guests in this series for the Las Cruces International Film Festival, and thanks so much for talking to us.
Awesome. Thank you
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Welcome back to the TowerCast podcast, the Towering podcast for El Paso and the world. Filmmakers all over the world. We'd love to talk to you guys. And we're at the Las Cruces International Film Festival having a great time. We're sticking around because there's too many amazing guests that we get to talk to. I'll introduce the special guest for this specific episode in a minute. I got to introduce my fellow co-host, Mr. Michael Delau,
Excited to be back again.
and Mr. John Eric Castro.
I just can't wait to talk to
And thank you to Austin, making sure we're sounding good out there, our producer editor. And obviously, you all know who I am, hopefully, is Carlos Altorra. I'm your humble film servant, and offering a writing, directing perspective, cinematography perspective, acting perspective here. We have an awesome guest. Now, for film festivals like this that are tend to be a little more intimate, we don't get that many great people like our special guest. He's done an amazing body of work, and we're going to be excited to talk to him. We have Mr. Michael Brook, and he's been the composer for Land of Dreams, which is the opening night film for the festival. But, I mean, we're talking The Fighter, we're talking Heat, Tallulah, which is a film that I really love, and just a number of other projects that he's been the composer for that have been amazing. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
My total pleasure.
Awesome.
Dude, all our composer friends are like, no.
Yeah. But our in-house composer is probably like, no. But thank you so much for joining us. Man, the perks of being a waffler. We're gonna talk about that too, but we'll get there.
Easy, man.
Yeah. No, it's very exciting, especially just on the indie front. These are indie gems
Yeah.
that people don't remember all that much. But we always like to kick off with our guests. What made you want to become a storyteller? Music, I'm a musician. I know this. Music is storytelling, hands down. And music and cinema carries so much weight. So tell us about what made you want to become a storyteller.
Well, I wanted to be a musician, and then I used to do albums and produce other people.
Okay.
I did a lot of work for a label in England called Real World.
Okay.
Real
It
World.
does like cross-cultural fusion type things. So I work with people from Pakistan, India, Italy,
Wow.
Senegal, Tanzania,
Wow.
and then my own music was like I'm a guitar player.
Okay.
Not so much of one now, but anyway.
What style? What was your style of guitar?
Well, it's a bit hard to say. Kind of influenced by like Ennio Morricone,
Of course.
that guitar.
Yeah.
Of course.
Um,
The late, great.
yeah, and I like that a lot. And then I was interested, or I connected with sort of Indian music in some ways. So
we just did the Apu trilogy on our other podcast in Sayaji Ray. Just the music is something we talked about a lot. So absolutely.
And so I was doing that. I moved to England from Canada to do that.
Okay.
And then always wanted to live in America.
Okay.
And then came here.
Where did you grow up? Specifically in Canada?
Toronto.
Okay,
yeah.
Toronto.
And then the kind of music world I was in sort of went away in the early 90s. It wasn't possible to earn a living anymore.
Sure.
And I had always wanted to do film music, and I had done a couple of films.
Okay.
But it just, this natural transition happened away from album stuff or producing and into more scoring. And it wasn't a strategic choice or anything. It just happened.
What would you say was the first, I mean, you had done a couple of films and you had an idea, but what would you say was the first film that you said, I could do this and I love doing this? Was there a specific film that you thought this is the next step?
Well, actually, the first one I worked on was like that.
What was the film?
Sorry, I got a scratchy throat.
No, you got it.
It was called Heroin? No, they changed the name. It was with The Edge from U2.
Oh, wow.
And we did the score. I think they changed the Captive.
Captive.
Yeah.
Okay, Captive.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was the first score I'd ever worked on.
Oh, wow.
And we had no idea what we were doing. But I had always thought I would because I'm not a singer. And so I always thought, well, that's another place where people who make up music with instruments.
Right. Absolutely. It's a voice of its own. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, it's one of those things that, like you say, it becomes natural because as artists, the term is starving artists, right? We're always looking to make a living, but at the same time, you want to do it in the field you love. So for you to naturally be attracted to film, that's amazing. Now, you talked a little bit about inspiration from Ennio Morricone, but is there a specific, I know, Castro, I'm going to steal your question, but is there a specific film or a specific director, specific composer that you were like, I love this. This is really what I want to do. Would you say that there's somebody that inspired you in that regard?
That wasn't quite the process, but I listened to Morricone before I ever thought about doing music for films, and I thought his music was magic.
Tarantino likes to say, I think Ennio Morricone is not just the best film composer, but the best composer, period. Music, period. And I think people listen to his scores and think that this is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it and I sort of got interested in it. I had seen a lot of the movies, but I would just listen to it as music. And that's actually rare that film score works as music, I think. And that's no criticism of scores that don't work as music. They can still contribute.
Inform.
I wanted to ask, coming from a musician world where you're creating albums, you're creating your own sound, and then transitioning into like film scoring where you're taking another piece of art, the script, and then trying to find the best way to give that tone. I mean, did you see that as a challenge, or did you enjoy that transition, trying out giving art and life to something that was already kind of there?
Yes.
Long story short.
It's the thing that I like about film a lot is and people I think are if you don't accept that it's a really collaborative process, it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult anyway, but if what I love and is that I'll work with a director who has lots of ideas about what the emotions should be or what emotions the score should focus on, because often there's more than one in the scene.
It's highlighting specific
beats,
emotions.
right?
Yeah. And themes and also, okay, there's three things happening in the scene. Which one do we want the score to kind of bring a spotlight to?
Sure.
Right.
And for me, it's quite honestly, I hate doing music by myself. And so working with directors who really have often they spend a lot of time thinking about what's supposed to be going on here emotionally.
Yeah.
It's a rewarding collaboration. And that's one of the things I like about it the most.
Just that bridge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's most people that are in crews or in cast will say that, but it's awesome to hear from somebody, a composer, say like this is extremely collaborative, despite the fact that we're in a quiet room 2 months after wrapping and just working with 2 people or 3 people, and then you going off with your group of musicians and saying this is what it is. Yeah. So that's very special to hear from somebody like you. Now, in that line, in that vein of working with these eccentric directors who have a lot of ideas, you got to work with Sean Penn on Into the Wild, and Emil Hirsch is obviously the lead, and this is based on a true story, and it's very emotional and it's a very heavy film, and the score has to reflect a lot of this. Can you talk a little bit about Into the Wild and kind of that experience?
Well, what happened on that was the picture editor who I'd worked with before, Jay Cassidy, was editing that, and he had tempted with quite a bit of my music.
Okay.
And then
just for beats, just to get the
assembled of the kind of look for the vibe and you know what the flavor.
Sure.
And so and he tried different things, and generally Sean on average responded positively to my stuff.
Oh, okay. Good.
So then Sean said, "Do you want to get involved?" And
this was after the film had already been wrapped. If we're talking about
wow.
Yeah.
Well, they did some reshoots, but essentially,
because a lot of the times the composer hopefully gets involved with the script and says, let's start working on the music at that point, right? So
that has never happened to me.
Never happened to you.
No.
Wow. Wow. That's.
I think it's partly because, well, you know how difficult it is to get a film made.
Yeah.
And so the director, producers, they're dealing with money, actors, sets, location, script.
Right.
They got to get all that done. And so, it's a 25-hour-a-day job. And so they're not thinking about anything they don't have to think about at that minute.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so when they wrap, then they say, well, I guess we're going to need some music, generally. And, certainly in my experience.
Now, I mean, though Into the Wild is something a composer, much like a cinematographer to a certain degree, editors, they have to adapt to the different personalities, right? I love David O. Russell, and you did The Fighter. Now, that's a different director, I think different temperaments as an example. And I know there's a lot of films in between, don't get me wrong, but to pinpoint specifically, and you got to work on that. By definition, a sports film to a certain degree, but it carried so much more emotion than that, right?
Right.
So what was
I'm not sure it is a sports film.
Yeah, the couple matches.
There's sports in it.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway.
My point being, it's a different experience entirely, right? So, what was that experience like for you on a picture like that?
Well, my experience was good, partly because I think David benefits from a reduced number of options.
Oh, okay.
And so,
as opposed to saying this is the broad spectrum.
He'd already had, he'd already worked with another composer, and that hadn't worked out, and they were running out of time, and so. And I didn't quite know that whole story when I got involved.
Sure.
But I think in retrospect, my experience was pretty good, partly because decisions had to be made.
Right.
And you couldn't explore, 999 options.
As much as that people think that's the desires. Oh, we spent 6 months on just picking.
That's the last thing I ever want to do. Yeah.
You like to have a specific. I mean, you like to see the picture, the rough cut, whatever, and say this is what I feel based on your emotions, and you're able to collaborate with the director on that front. Correct? Or
it's more a kind of listening process that usually. Sometimes I'll work also with the picture editor quite a bit.
Sure.
So they've been on the film minimum 2 years usually, or more. So they know way more about it than I ever will. And so to a certain degree, my job is to listen to them.
Right.
Kind of like get caught up, or what do you mean?
Say again?
Kind of like get caught up or just listen?
No, it's more that they how to express it. They know that they have a lot of depth in their understanding of the story and what emotional things need to happen.
Okay.
And whenever I see a film, it can easily go musically 3 or 4 ways, or more. And none of them will be wrong. But so my job generally is to listen to the filmmakers and say, okay, what are we trying to do here? Because sometimes it's not completely clear at the time,
right?
And so I need direction. And
sure,
it's a little bit. In some ways, like, composers in the past, they used to have a patron. And the patron would say, or painters, and the patron would say, hey, write a mass for my daughter on Sunday.
This is the commission, this is the assignment, this is the gig.
And being a composer for film is definitely not just making up music. It's trying to find out what people are trying to achieve emotionally.
Sure.
And sometimes they might even have more specific opinions about what the music should be. And so it's trying to enact their vision of what needs to happen, whether it's only emotionally or whether it's sometimes also specifically there are specific musical elements they want to happen.
But I love how linear kind of you're saying, because it's far from a linear process per se. It is artistic. At the end of the day, the arts have to be in there. But I love how linear you paint something for the filmmakers to say, I need your direction, and then we'll go from there. And this is the process. Because a lot of composers will say, I need my freedom and I need to express this, that, and the third. But in your case, it's been like, assignment, please, direction, please. Let me get into my world.
To a degree, but let me fill that in a bit.
Yeah.
What I like to do is see the film, talk to people, and then just go away by myself for ideally like a month or so, and just mess around. Like, I'm not trying to achieve anything. I'm just immersing myself in what I understand is the kind of emotional vibe of the film.
Right.
And so I come up with a lot of ideas. They're short, simple ideas.
Right.
And then if the director wants to collaborate in that process, say, which Sean did, say, here's a whole bunch of things. Of course, 90% of them are going to be wrong. But this is a way to both enhance our conversation about what to do and make it specific, because talking about music is kind of meaningless on certain levels. So you can point to something and say, I like this, what this is doing. But it also allows, and this was the thing I learned from Jay Cassidy, the picture editor, that in his opinion, and I agree, and it doesn't always work out, but it's better to not have completely specific goals, and richer connections happen that are maybe not exactly conscious. So I'm not aiming to make this feel sad. It's more like, oh, we got 40 ideas here. Let's just throw them up against picture. And all of a sudden this one makes the performance of the actor, all of a sudden there's another depth to it that none of us knew was there.
I love that, because a lot of these, I think it's safe to say that a lot of the pictures that you've worked on are what we consider these like indie darlings that people are kind of, diamonds in the rough. People are picking up on. Perks of Being a Wallflower, another example. Like, it doesn't feel sad. It doesn't feel like it feels like ambitious, and it feels like these specific characters have to live a certain life a certain way, and the music is informing that. I think that's really special. It's a really special approach, because like you say, it enhances the storytelling altogether.
Yeah, I like it. I like films. I like popcorn movies, where whatever you see on the screen, that's what it is. I like watching them. But in terms of the things I like to work on, it's where there's complex emotional things going on. and there's more than one emotion, and there's like not even necessarily in conflict, but
Right.
it's like in Brooklyn, there were a lot
Terrific
of
pictures.
emotional threads through that. Some were sad, some were celebratory.
You have to match those amazing performances. Saoirse Ronan is an amazing, amazing actress. And to
what
match,
planet is she from? I mean, she's
absolutely.
so talented. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love to focus a little bit on a picture that we were talking just before we rolled about Tallulah. Because again, it's one of those films that didn't get a ton of attention. And oddly enough, her next picture, one of her next pictures would be Coda, Academy Award winning film. The writer-director. I mean, but Tallulah was this very special picture to me. And again, we were enveloped in this, I'd like to call kind of a second renaissance of indie pictures, and people were paying attention more. It was right before the massive streaming bubble, although Tallulah was a Netflix film that kind of got lost in the weeds. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience there? Because again, collaborative with the director, writer, she seems like a terrific collaborator. But can you tell me a little bit of that experience with Tallulah?
I had done a little, just when Sean was starting to make films, Sean Heder, a short with her. And we just knew each other socially. And she said, "Oh, can you help me?" And we did. And then she said, "Do you want to maybe score this film I'm working on, this feature I'm doing?"
Was it her? I think it was her first feature, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. And, totally up my street. Really.
Emotionally, absolutely. Yeah. I see that. I see that through line.
And subsequently, we worked on an Apple series called Little America.
Oh, that's right.
Where she's one of the showrunners, and so that process has continued.
Wow.
In terms of that specific film, I'm not sure if I have anything specific. I'm trying to think.
Or was it more of kind of, I mean, I know you worked, I know you knew each other socially and had a relationship there, but was it more of an assignment to a certain degree? Like you said, it was more of this is what the picture is and this is where we're at? Or
No.
Sounds like you got involved in the process pretty early on that one, no? Or?
No, they were in post.
Same thing in post?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, it was still a process of exploration.
Sure.
And I really enjoy collaborating with Sean. And in some ways, the directors I like most working with are often they feel uncomfortable about music. And in a way, it's not like because then I'm comfortable because I work in the music realm. It's more that if they don't talk about music, that's better. Like I want to know, what are we aiming for emotionally?
Do you feel like it throws you off track a little bit to say, this is the score from this picture from the 50s that I really want to emulate, or this is the soundtrack that throws you off instead of like, this is the emotion of the picture.
Well, there can be a good temp can help, sometimes.
References are okay.
Yeah, but I think often the directors who I think we have the most fruitful collaborations. It's where it's not that they say, "I don't know anything about music." You deal with it. It's more, I don't feel articulate in this world, but let's have a conversation. That conversation where, again, I throw lots of pieces of music at them.
Right.
To me, that's a really rewarding process.
Sure. I love Sean here. I got to see her at Adobe Max in LA last year, and just I feel like she's, again, kind of barely getting started in terms of the features and doing very well, but she's a very unique voice. And I'd love to ask you about working with Alan Yang because on Tiger Tail, because he's a fresh new voice and has been doing great things. Like I love Master of None for one. I know he's one of the
I think it's great.
But you got to work with him on Tiger Tail. Again, very unique perspective, very unique voice. Asian leads, Asian director, writer. I mean everything, but it's very specific. Was that the same case working with Alan in terms of collaboration, or?
Well, it was a little different in that Alan's like really quite an accomplished musician. And and so the character who like is the musician in the film, it's kind of him. And I think there was a real challenge in that, and this is a lot of composers have experienced this, that the temp was kind of perfect.
Oh.
And so it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, if like ideally some films they should just go with the temp. Like 2001, you know, like there was all that there was the Alex North score that Kubrick just threw out and just you know used all the needle drops, which and I've heard the score and Kubrick in a very obnoxious way made the right decision. I think.
Absolutely. So that was the case in
well, no, not that, but it was that. Also, it's a very emotionally, on a certain level, delicate film, and so it's like it was such a balancing act. Like, okay, 3 notes, 4 is too many, but you know, it was like really trying to find where that like sweet spot was very challenging on that film, and I think we all ended up feeling pretty good about it.
Sure,
but some are hard.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
absolutely. A couple more things before we touch on Land of Dreams, but just a couple of things that you contributed on the soundtrack side, I should say, right? As a performer to a certain degree, arranger, you got to work on films like Heat and Any Given Sunday. So tell us a little bit about, you weren't the sole composer per se, but you were contributing to these very specific, I mean, these films are legend now, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that side of the music?
Well, for Heat, Michael Mann said, and I had never really done any film. I didn't know how it worked.
95, so this is right before you made that transition.
I'd done an IMAX film, but like a documentary. And so he said, I like this piece of yours. Do you want to do some music? And they sent me some scenes. But I didn't even know how to read the time code. I thought, man, they want 40 minutes of music here.
But they didn't, I mean, you spoke directly to Michael in this case as opposed to a music supervisor or a composer. This was you saying, hey, I like your piece. Can you contribute something?
Yeah.
Which usually isn't the case, right?
Well, no, usually I deal with the director.
With director specifically.
Okay. But I had no idea how that whole thing worked at all. So then he said, well, come down to LA, and because I was in Northern California, and work on this. Right. So I did. And in many ways, it was kind of a nightmare because
also,
well, partly the technology that I could see it. I was in a studio in LA. I would work on something. I would send him, I think, like a cassette. And 3 days later, he would say, well, can you make it more street or something like that? But by that time, it was a completely analog studio. So we could not take us a day to get back to and we never got perfectly back to that.
It's like dailies with film, right? I mean, it's processing, it's waiting the next day.
So ultimately, I did some cues, and none of them ended up in the film.
Really?
And he had also, I didn't know, and I didn't even know, like, am I hired as a composer? And it wasn't that I didn't know. I didn't even think that thought.
Wow. Yeah.
So he had like 5 or 6 composers working on it, which is, that's his prerogative.
Yeah.
But it made for a sort of, I mean, I was kind of oblivious to that side of it. But it was just like, I would work on some music and, have very brief conversations with him.
Right.
So
that could also be very discouraging, though, no? Specifically in that stage in your career where you didn't even know if you wanted to pursue music and cinema. Most people listening are probably like, I would have been done there. My music didn't make the cut, or it ended up being in the soundtrack afterwards, that type of thing. But what did you feel at that point? I mean, that could be very discouraging.
Ultimately, a piece from one of my albums was a pretty prominent part of the film. So that kind of worked out.
Okay.
And it was like, well, I don't know how to score, but I can make music that people put in good films.
Right. Yeah.
I talk about motif all the time when we're scoring or we're getting ready to do something or noticing on a picture, so that you feel like that specific moment was this motif informed a lot of the film.
Well, I'm sort of conflicted about the concept of a motif.
Okay.
Quite honestly. It seems like at the beginning of the process, we often talk about that, like with the people I'm working with. And as things go on, in my experience, and I know there are films where there's like major theme that just kind of comes through, or a character theme.
Yeah.
But the kind of things I tend to be involved in, usually throughout the process, it becomes, well, yes, this is this person's scene, but now it's changed, so we can't use the theme that we had at the beginning. And so by the end of the day, often the concept of the theme has kind of gone away a bit.
Sure. They have to go through their character arc, so naturally the music has to follow.
And I think it's also in some styles of film, it's a more useful concept.
Sure.
But I go along with it.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of my favorite films of all time is the Morning You Were in La La Land, and Justin Hurwitz absolutely uses motif, but it is a musical after all, right? And these two characters are very central. So I agree. I think it needs to be used for specific things at specific moments. But that's great perspective. Was it the same case with Oliver Stone on any given Sunday?
No, I really had nothing to do with that.
Really?
They just licensed a piece I had done.
I see.
Oh, okay.
I think I met with him and the music supervisor, but kind of nothing seemed to happen from that meeting, and then they just ended up licensing the piece.
Oh, wow.
Of an album
I mean, that's a little bit easier of a process, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not a bad thing to say.
Yeah.
Now, if we can get to Land of Dreams, right?
Yeah.
Because this is what you're here for.
Yeah.
What was the experience on Land of Dreams? It's a very heavy film, very heavy subjects, and
Good cast.
yeah, and the score obviously is.
Were there any new challenges to, I guess, this one compared to your other films?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, that's okay too.
No,
We've
no,
been doing this a long time,
and I'm not
Yeah, it's
hesitating because I don't want to say no. I'm just trying to think.
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge was how dark should the music go? Because there's and also there's a kind of surreal element, a dreamy element of the film, and it was an enjoyable challenge. Like again, finding the sweet spot, which is often what it is.
Sure.
It's like this is to that, this is to that. Okay, now we found it. But it was I just love working with Shireen because she really is an artist, and film is kind of one of her outlets. And I think I kind of connected with that a lot. So it was like a really great process.
Is there a point in time when you're writing music and you have like an aha moment where you feel like this really fits it and you can't see it going any other way, but you have to work with a director that completely disagrees and you have to sacrifice that? Or do you feel like when you've written something or done something and you truly believe in it, then you're fighting gung-ho?
I hardly ever fight.
Okay.
Because I know I'm never going to win.
That's what you learned.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like it's the director's baby.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think they're wrong. And often I really learn from them. And I'll think something, and it actually doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened where I'll go, I think this is killing it. And it's fantastic. And they'll say, yeah, but it's not doing blah. And I'll go, oh, yeah, right.
I ask that because, in every aspect of the creative process, especially like me on a cinematography perspective, going towards you, director, we've done films and there'll be times where I'll either fight for a shot because I can see the merit in it, from my perspective, and you're like, no, that doesn't work, or vice versa, you'll say like, no, I need you to shoot it this way. And ultimately, director has the last word. But it's interesting that you say that you don't really fight because you know what it's going to end up to be. But there's always that little challenge. There's always the beautiful collaboration of pushing back on each other and seeing how each person's going to put in their own input to create the final product.
But it's like two divorced parents, right? Like you have to get it's whatever's best for the child, type of thing. Like,
well, no, that's true, but also it's often not exactly an adversarial process.
Absolutely.
Like I've definitely experienced it where the director was really surprised by what happened musically, and liked it. But in terms of like trying to change their mind, I don't try that very much.
Sure.
And I don't mean it in a resigned way. Just that
you just never felt the need, right, to like go and push back.
Well, it's their call.
Right.
So
At the end of the day.
it's kind of like I can give them a menu, but
that's good.
Ultimately, they choose
Whatever
what they want to eat. You know,
You can tell them this is the best of the day. You know,
yeah,
That's
exactly.
fantastic perspective, Michael. I mean, I think we could spend hours talking about this, but I know we gotta.
I got a two-sided question.
Some other people,
just a
are
little
getting
bit.
tired. Yeah.
Sorry, you have.
I got a two-sided question just as an audience member. Which is one that you really hold close to your heart?
From his work?
From his
your
work?
work.
And then second, since you used to play guitar since you were little, I know you were in a band.
Yeah.
Or a few.
What was your first band name?
Oh.
Just taking you back to those times.
Well, the first one I remember.
Yeah, your first. And it's always
was with a friend from high school. And he went to art school.
Okay.
And had there was this really beautiful girl he went to school with that we all had a crush on.
Oh, okay.
And she was a Polish girl. And so her name was Irene Stabelko. And so we decided, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but also because we had a crush on this girl, to call it the Irene Stabelko Blues Band.
Wow! I know those stories.
That's
Beautiful.
Awesome. And now a film or a project of yours that you feel like you just always go back to, or something that you hold dear to your heart.
Either you felt like you took it to the next level on this one, or
Well, it's like, who's your favorite kid?
I know.
But I have to say that the process on Brooklyn was the one where I think I gained the most from the process. Because
It's a terrific picture.
the director had this unbelievably detailed emotional map of every scene, like every 3 or 4 seconds, that I had never encountered thinking like that. I'm more like, what's the vibe? This goes
That's
here.
how-
And then there's like, okay, we need to respond to that. But his was more like, no, when she looks away, she's like thinking, I'm never going to come back. And then when she does this, and that was really hard. Like, it was a difficult process, and I thought I was going to get fired. It was like really, really challenging.
Intense, yeah.
But for me, that's maybe one of the films I came out the other end, like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type thing. And so in that sense, I think the process, the changes I went through making that were maybe some of the biggest on that film.
Wow, beautiful, awesome. It's a terrific picture, but we haven't seen it. But last question for you, Michael, and thank you. You've given us way too much time, and we appreciate it. But is there any advice you can give to storytellers out there, be it composers, directors, writers, anybody who you feel
to all your
what you've learned on your
fans.
journey? Yeah.
Well, two things.
Yeah.
One is get the script right. Make sure it makes sense.
Okay.
And run it by everybody you can to find issues. And because your film is going to be better and your process is going to be more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And sure, be open to things that happen in real time, like happy accidents.
Happy accidents.
For sure. But have a really solid plan, I think is so important. So much drama behind the scenes happens because for various reasons, not necessarily incompetence, but compromises or whatever that didn't happen. And it's so hard for people to catch up on that level.
Right.
And so it's 90% preparation, I think.
Yeah.
So get it so everybody agrees, wow, we're done, then go shoot it. Like Alfred Hitchcock,
Right.
And then for composers, I mean, there are different styles, but for me, it's 1,000% the emotion. What instrument it is, what style of music is very secondary. And that's not for all styles of film.
Right.
But for me, if you sort of zero in on what are we trying to do emotionally, then it's kind of easy. And also it's easy to know if you're doing it or not doing it, which I think is also a big challenge. Is this working? I don't know. I've seen it 1,000 times.
Important to discern at that stage.
Yeah.
Amazing. You heard it here on the TowerCast podcast. This is an amazing perspective on the amazing composer. Michael, thank you so much for everything that you've offered.
Real pleasure.
And stay tuned. We're talking to a bunch of great people in addition to Michael here at the Las Cruces International Film Festival. Thank you guys for sticking around and go check out his work because it's amazing. I'm sure there's way more coming. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you.